So we're holding Taaruvot Siman Kuf Halacha Ches. But we'll do a quick review of Zayin. Zayin and Ches are very interesting. As we began to explain, they present a very radical different kind of concept in Taaruvos. Zayin is a situation where we have a Taaruvos and one of the pieces somehow just vanished into the sea by itself. It fell out, the wind blew it, somehow it just was not, it was not, of course, not intentionally done, and it was not even b'shoigeg that it just fell off someone's hand. Somehow it just came out, and because it's no longer there, it's not be'ein, as we explained, it cannot be found, we make an assumption that that is the one that was usher. And since we make that assumption that that is the one that was usher, even though the first time around we have a situation where the Taaruvos it's not bottled because something is choshev in there, like a dover roilis skabed or anything that is not bottled. Nonetheless, once this incident, once this occurrence takes place, it basically takes away, removes, cancels the chashivas that was there to begin with. Somehow, the chashivas in the first place creates a situation where no matter how many you have in the Taaruvos, the halachas of bittul do not apply. It's so chashuv. It's a derabbanon, yes, but sometimes the derabbanon can be even stricter than the deraisa. I think we know that by now. And that's the case of a davar chashuv sheino bottle, because within Torah it is bottle. But came along the chachamim, and this is the chachamim again, and said, but there are situations where even this davar chashuv can cease to be a problem. One of them is found in Sif Zayin, and Halacha Zayin, even though we did see it before, whether it was by Biura or Kabit, that there are conditions to each one of them when they pose a problem. Chaticha Rudis Kabit that just shredded is no longer Chaticha Rudis Kabit, right? So each one of those has, of course, its own conditions for continuing to be a davar chashuv. But assuming that none of those conditions are a problem here, in other words, they are completely davar chashuv. Here we have the scenario of something completely different. That if it fell into the ocean, if it's no longer be'ein, we said that the davar chashuv is no longer a problem. Therefore, if you have roiv, shishim, whatever it is that is necessary, it's bottle, right? Yeah, but let's just finish.
Okay.
The mechaber says in the first scenario, v'nechal echad mehem b'shoigeg. So in other words, it's not just nofal bayam, which is the second scenario. The reason why I didn't mention first nechal is because not everybody agrees with nechal. But according to the mechaber, it includes, vanishing includes even having eaten it, b'shoigeg, or nofal atzmoy layam, b'inyan sheneva min ha'olam, utru kol ha'cherem. Because we make an assumption that the one that is gone is the Isra one. So what's interesting about this, the chidush over here what's different about this, is that we just recently learned a similar case of Porish coming out, and we said, called the Porish Meruba Porish. So what would be here? If we would apply the same logic here, we would say, yes, the one that came out and fell into the ocean is part of the roiv. And what's the roiv? It's a heter. And here we're saying the exact opposite. That what came out, you know what? You can sleep well this night. What fell out is the isra that fell in. Wow. Imagine having that kind of luck in the lottery. Because that's what we're saying. We have 1 in 1,000. And we're saying that 1 of the 1,000 is the one that fell into the ocean. That's a big kiddush. To say called the Porish Meruba Porish is much more logical. It makes sense. And that's what the whole idea of roiv is. Roiv means statistics. And here we're saying something that has nothing to do with statistics. Has nothing to do with roiv. Has nothing to do with what we've learned till now. Yeah, Ilan, we're going to say something.
Two questions. Whether davar yavish should be davar lach. Speaking, this whole zayin.
How could you have a davar lach that just came out?
I'm just asking.
No, it's basically a davar yavish. Yeah, a davar yavish.
Now, if we say that we are no longer concerned with davar chashuv,
right?
Because we are toilet that it fell into the end,
right?
Does that mean we still need a majority against it, or no longer look to see majority against?
No, you still need a majority.
You still, as though it was still
right.
present.
Yes, that's a good
so
point.
The rise, I still need a majority. The Rabbanan, I say it's
right.
Interesting.
Yes, The majority is still necessary. In other words, we're basically, and it's important that you raise this issue because, as we will see in Siv Ches, we're always falling back on the Deraisa din. We're falling back in that Midoraisa we have a Rav here, and we need a Rav. There is, however, one situation where you may not need a Rav. We'll talk a little bit about that too today.
And then the other
according to some.
According to the Mechaber, who says if it would be Bashoigig, it would also be, would he also permit one by Shoigig dropped it into the...
No.
So by him,
Mechaber
has to be all by itself, but eating can be Bashoigig.
Eating can be Bashoigig. Yeah. The Mechaber does not go along with the Shita that holds that if it fell into the water, Bashoigig, it's okay. Yeah.
The concept of Tuesday is
Yeah.
from all of humanity, gone from
Right.
But if it's Nechol, somebody still has it.
No, but he consumed it. It's gone. It's not present.
It's not called food anymore.
When, as we explained it, the Rashba explains when something is present, as opposed to something that is not present, which we're making it that diuk. It makes a big chiluk here. When something is present, you have to judge it. You have to make a determination. Is this asur, this mutter? Why should we say this is the asur one more than this is the mutter one? If anything, I would say call the Parish Ruah Parish. That's when it's in front of us, I have to make a determination. And why should I say one more than the other? It has a suffix. When it's be'ain. But when it's not be'ain, I'm not dealing with it anymore. I don't have to make that determination in the same way. So the Chachamim were lenient in making this presumption that, and we'll explain it again.
There was an implication
Yeah.
that it had to be so that no one would get better than what.
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
Nechol doesn't work the same. It's different.
Yeah, Nechal disappeared into his intestines.
I understand where we're playing, but it's different.
Yeah, right.
It's no longer called.
It's no longer called food. It's no longer around to be determined, what the status of it is. And the one that was matir, by the way, Shoigig ben Nefila, was the Rashba. So even though the Mechaber goes very much like the Rashba, in this one Nekuda, he does not go along with the Rashba. He doesn't mention it, the Bechlal. It would have to have been Nofal Me'atzmoy, Layam. Yeah.
How do we distinguish between one to the sea and one that fell Shoigig?
He was holding meat, and one of them fell into the water, right? As opposed to...
He was holding that piece into the water.
As opposed to a package, he loaded the meat somewhere there. He was somehow close to the water, and he had it in a boat. Just somehow one piece fell into the water.
So that would all be...
That would not be B'shoigig. That would be Nofal Me'atzmoy.
All these examples. Or the
No, the one that it's
B'shoigig.
in his hand is
That's
Nofal B'shoigig from his own hand. Yeah. Now, what's the problem with Nofal B'shoigig? Why wouldn't everybody agree with Nofal B'shoigig? Only Atu Mezid, because of Exera. Only because of that. And we explain why Bittul Isser was different, B'shoigig. Bevatel Isser B'shoigig, we said, was mutter. Lechatchil, it's Asr, for him and for the one he did it for. What was the difference between, why is Bittul Isser B'shoigig okay? Why don't we have Exera there? Because we're not choished, or choishesh, we're not concerned that he will actually be mevatel b'mezid, and a real isser. Here, do we have a real isser? Not necessarily.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Once it's gone. We don't really have a real isser over here, that he should want to do this.
And besides that, we're saying we still need bittul. All that's gone is haticha chashva.
Right, exactly. That's very important to keep in mind, is that we still need bittul. What's gone here is the concept of davar choshuv, which will help us understand a little bit also siv ches, that we're actually going back to understanding what happens to a davar chashuv. On the one hand, it becomes non-batal. On the other hand, there are situations that can render it batal, or at least that it doesn't pose a problem.
It's no obstacle.
Calculate
Often.
batal,
Yeah.
does that include the piece that's now only based on what's left in the Taaruvot?
One more time. We have a
Do we
Taaruvot.
calculate bit
Right.
after it disappears into the
Sure.
Do we calculate including that
Piece of
piece that disappeared, or only that's left?
No, we need to have the Taaruvos that's left. You need to have roiv.
But we don't calculate the piece that's...
No, we're saying the piece that is missing is the one that was aser.
I
Right?
understand that, but
Right.
then you still need...
But
the
you
rest.
still need the roiv, because in the event it's not, you cannot be matir. Like Ilan pointed out, what was accomplished here is that the davar chashuv that posed a problem is no longer an obstacle, but Bitul b'roiv you need midaraisa.
But if you were still counting that piece as if it was part of the yoke, if you don't count it because that was gone.
You still need a bitul. You still have a suffix here, right?
Right.
It's still a suffix. When you have a suffix, you need roiv.
So in other words, you assume that one of the pieces is the asur. Look up at your right, so to be mevatel.
Sure.
You look at the remaining pieces.
Right.
You see if you have enough remaining pieces to be mevatel, the supposed is still present.
That may be present.
And well, it's certainly present. It might not be an isur. As you're looking at the number of pieces that are present right now.
Yeah, the piece.
You're saying one of them might be isur.
Right.
And in the remaining others, you have to have a majority against that one piece that might be an isur, whereby you don't know which one it is.
Right.
But you're not going to factor in the one that fell out as the isser and now say, is everything that I have in front of me a majority against the one that fell out?
Right. That's not really the question here. So we were just concerned about the davar choshev not being batel, and here we're saying, well, it's no longer an obstacle. Shanu toilin loima ha'isur holach lo, as the Mechaber points out. We're toile. That's an interesting word. We make this presumption, I guess.
Yeah,
presumption. That which is gone is the isur one, which is interesting. We've been talking about kol de porish, miruba porish. But here, the leniency, that since the whole thing is at the Rabbanan, to begin with, we're saying that so long as the davar that was a suffix is not be'ein, as long as it's not be'ein, as the Rashba points out, you have to make that chiluk, it's not be'ein, the Chachamim allowed us to make that presumption. The chashivas is not strong enough anymore. In other words, it's not strong enough to pose a problem anymore. Once something else happened to that whole Taaruvot.
Because there's a doubt of whether it's even present.
Exactly.
Just to use a different...
Exactly. There's already a doubt if that davar choshev is present to begin with. Then why should it even pose a problem then? If it's a suffix, if it's present.
As a
very good clarification. Yes.
It's a different example. Just as
right.
Make room for the king. What king? Provided he's here.
Right.
So what kind of a king is that? Provided he's here. He's the king. You know he's here.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps let's go into Siv Zayin. Siv Ches. We'll see a little bit more ideas about davar chashuv from a different angle. Davar she'eino botel machmas chashivusa. Once again, something that is not botel because of its chashivas. Shenisarev b'acheren. Got mixed in with others. What happened now? Well, this time around, it's not that one vanished. This time something else happened. The nofal me taaruvot is azois from this mixture where it's not bottle. One of them, not all of them, one of them nofal me taaruvot is azois echad lishnayim acherim to two others, even to two others. Majority, right? We're not done. The nofal min ashloisha from these three, second set, one of them fell echad lishnayim acherim to another set of two. So we have three now again. Hara'elu acherim, the last set number 3, mutorim, not set number 1, not set number 2, set number 3 is mutor. Why? Shera'echot shel taruvos harishono batel b'roiv. The first set is batel b'roiv. V'im nofal echad me'taruvos harishono le'elef, kulam asurim. Nonetheless, if one of them falls into even 1,000, they're all asurim. So why do we need bitul b'roiv? V'lo ne'emar batel b'roiv elo lehatir sfek sfeikan. The only reason I'm telling you that there's still, in theory, in principle actually, a bitul b'roiv is because there may be a time where you will have a sfek sfeika. And I could be mater sfek sfeika. Shem yipol min ha'taruvos hashniya, from the second one, lemokom acher, eino oiser. If from the second set, one would to fall into another set, the third set, it would not answer. That's the lashon of the Rambam, pretty much, that you have a sfek sfeika in the third set. Why not the second set? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about now. The Rambam seems to be saying you only have a real, true sfek sfeika the third set. Remember, the first set is asur afilu be'elef. It's a davar chashuv. All right. Second set, you have one of the taruvos ha'asura falling into another roiv, and we still say it's asur for some reason. Yeah.
Question.
Right.
Are we saying that something that is a davar hashuv, it's the prohibited one or not,
Right.
fell into the second taruvos?
No, we don't know.
Well, if it's not a davar hashuv,
We don't know what fell in.
No, I'm not
Oh
saying
no! Oh, I
it's
see what you're saying.
But it would have to be a davar chashuv.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Oh, obviously.
Then it would be
What's
mispatel anyway.
what's the question?
So
They're all dvarim
in
chashuvim.
all three cases, it has to be
They need to be dvarim chashuvim. Otherwise, we don't have a problem. Right? We can identify that this is not the one. They're all dvarim chashuvim. One of them is asar. Right? One of them is treif.
So in each case, I have to calculate that the davar chashuv that fell in here might have been that asar one.
Yes. So the question is, the Mechaber is pretty much going with the Rambam here, and the Rambam's shita in this case of Isser Achila, and I say it for a reason, I'll see why. Isser Achila, something that is also to eat, needs bittul 3 times, and the bittul is accomplished through Sfek Sfeika the third time around. What's the Sfek Sfeika? The third time around? Well, Safek, if this is the one that fell in from the first Taaruvos.
Into the second one.
And then into the third.
And on the third one, whether the one that fell into the third one is one that came, the original.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, it's the original. In other words, the one that fell in from the first one into the second one is, right?
Could have been a
Could have been a heter. Is that the one that fell in there? And even if you say it did fall into the second Taaruvos, who's to say that it fell into the third Taaruvos?
Or the other way around. You can say the other way around. The one that fell from the first Taurus into the second one,
right,
was that the prohibited one? And the one that fell from the second and the third one, was it the one that fell from the first one and the second
right.
one? It was it the first one, the prohibited one?
Right.
You have both ways.
Yeah, you can have it that way too. Yeah, basically, by the third case, you have a Sfek Sfeika. Why don't you have a Sfek Sfeika the second time around?
What will be the second one? What will be the second one?
Is this the prohibited one, the one I'm eating right now?
Mm-hmm.
The one I'm taking now?
Yes.
You may say, okay, you can't have them all together. Fine. Right, the second set, you can't have them all together?
No.
I understand. But why don't we have a suffix Sfeika?
But we're talking about the bar chashuv.
So what?
So I have a suffix. Is it I'm saying the bar chashuv fell into the second one.
Right.
So either it is the prohibited one, then everything here is prohibited, no matter what I take out of this pot.
No, that's the first Taaruvos.
I'm talking about the first Taaruvos.
I'm talking about the second.
The second. No. The first Taaruvos, everything is forbidden. Now something, and I don't have a suffix.
No.
Everything is forbidden because I have the.
Yeah, but I still have a suffix.
What's that? I have a davar chashuv that's forbidden. Even if this is a not prohibited one, it's still forbidden because the davar chashuv is not mispatel.
Right.
So what's the suffix?
You still have the one that is falling in.
No, I'm talking about the first Taaruvos.
The first Taaruvos, right.
There's no suffix.
Okay. The first Taaruvos.
Now, what fell from the first into the second one,
right.
I know something fell in.
I know something
it's a davar
fell in.
chashuv.
Right.
So the only question I have is it's the prohibited one.
Right.
That's the only question I have.
Right.
But if it is the prohibited one, everything in this pot is prohibited. So with respect to the second piece, I don't have the question, is that the prohibited one that fell in? Because since if it is the prohibited one, and it's a davar chashuv, even if what I'm taking out now something that's not the prohibited one, it's asur because of davar chashuv.
Only way you're going to deal
Very
with
good.
the situation
Yeah.
is because distinguishable from all of the others. Identify it, we have to take it.
No, obviously,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right?
for sure.
That's correct.
Means
That's
that
right.
everything, 3 pots,
Yeah.
has to be virtually identical to it.
Right.
They all have to be exactly the same size.
Yeah.
Well, at least similar enough,
Similar.
I can't
Similar.
tell the difference.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. So, Eli, you pretty much hit it right on, according to the ones who explain why you need 3. But not the ones who were satisfied with 2.
Oh, no, that's I guess I would have clash head on with them.
Yeah. Anyway, so before we get into explaining that, let's see, what is the Mikvaot Bechlal of this halacha? Why should there be a machlokes here? We don't know actually that there's a machlokes from learning the Mechaber alone. Okay, so before we go on, let's maybe we should read the Ramah too, get the whole picture. When we call makom ein adam echad lechol eskulon, one should not eat all the pieces, even on the third, apparently. V'davka sha'isur shenisar v'uvada isur. The only time we need 3 taruvas, according to the Rambam's shita, and those who hold like the Rambam, is when you have a vada isur. Aval sofek isur shenisar v'nofal me'oisur taruvas lemokom acher. Taaruvos shenis shori. If you have the first time around a sofek isur, I don't know for sure if it's a real isur. It's a sofek isur. It fell into a taruvas. Okay, so we have a sofek. This Taaruvos fell into a second one. Do you have a real Sfek the second time around? Because the first one is a suffix. Well, wait a minute. But the first one is a suffix begufoi. Not everybody allows a Sfek. We will see this when we come back later on. A real Sfek, they have to be concerning the exact same thing. Here is a suffix begufoi. If this in itself is kosher or treif. That's in it guf. Here's another suffix. Is it this or is it that? Which, you see, it's a different kind of suffix. So not everybody will allow, but the Rambam seems to not have a problem in allowing the second set of taruvos when the first Isser problem, piece, is only a suffix Isser. We'll talk about that another time. That if something is a davar sheyesh lo matirim, why allow sfex feika? It's a davar sheyesh lo matirim anyway, right? So we'll see that another time. Okay, so let's now go to the Makor. The Makor of this halacha is also found in Zvachim Ayin Daled. Very interesting sugi b'chlal. Ayin Daled over there, Ayin Daled over Aleph, Ayin Daled over Beis, where you have things that pertain to avodah zarah, and therefore asur behano, and you have things that are asur be'achila. And they don't seem to be. There shouldn't really seem to be a big difference between the two, other than the fact that one is asur behano. But as far as bitul, why should there be a difference? So supposedly there is no chiluk in the Gemara. So if you learn the Gemara, if you read the words, it's a little bit not clear, and that is why we have a machlokes. Is the Gemara really saying you need 2 or you need 3 sets? Believe it or not, it's not so clear. It's not 100% clear what is really required, and that is why we have a machlokes. The Rambam and Rashi learn from that Gemara in Avodah Zarah of a tabas, again a ring of Avodah Zarah falling into one mixture, and one of those first mixture falling into another mixture, right? That let me find it here. 1 second. So we have a machlokes there between the Rishonim, including Rashi and Tosfos, the Rambam, is the Gemara asking, or is it saying that we need 2 taruvos or we need 3 taruvos? So it could be, the Rishonim explain, that part of the machlokes between the various Rishonim as to how many taruvos sets you need stems from a different girsa. Okay. Otherwise, why would they be taught? I mean, we're learning it directly from the Gemara. So if they're having a difference of opinion about something that is mefurish, maybe it's not so mefurish. I mean, maybe there were 2 girsois, one requiring 2 sets and one requiring 3 sets. So the Mekor HaMachlokes, just so you should know, appears to be a possible question in the girsa of the Gemara. All right. So from the Rambam, as we saw in the Mechaber himself and Rashi, they imply that you need 3 taruvos. Rashba, the Ran, the Rosh, and quite a few other Rishonim, I think including Rabbeinu Tam, hold that 2 taruvos is enough. Now, before we go on, even though the Mechaber himself is very clear here how he paskins, like the Rambam, everybody gangs up on him and Mechaber. They like to pick on him. In Sif Dalet, you said 1 taruvos, when it was a kavua d'oraisa. Remember the case of kavua d'oraisa that fell into, you don't know which store you bought it from? Okay, fine, you got a problem. Right? You don't know which store you bought it from. One of them is strafe. It's a problem. Look at your receipt. Maybe you'll figure it out. All right. But anyway, he doesn't know. And then that piece fell into a taruvos. What do we say? It's mutar. Mechaber, how will you mark over there kavua d'oraisa? Right? And here, that fell into a taruvos, and here you're requiring 3 taruvos for something that is a derabbanan.
Was it Hadichabed or was
it's a kavua. It's a kavua.
But it's not a hashiva.
No, it's just kavua.
It's
a different concept, a different halacha, of course. But it's kavua and it's doraisa. So everybody picks on him. What's the pashup pshat? The pashup pshat, even though there's other ways to look at it too, there's a shach that goes into it a little bit more, and we already covered that a little bit. The pashup pshat is kavua, is mechzel mechza. It's already 50-50. It's a 50% chance it's mutar. That's not roiv.
The chumrah is that it's 50.
But it's also kula. You'll see why. The fact that it's 50% chance that it's a kula and now it falls into a roiv, you have a good sveika here. But as you began to say very, very well, in the case over here, by dover choshuv that is not botel afilu be'elef, what that does, that chumrah of dover choshuv, it transforms the whole first taruvos into all one piece of isser. There's no mechza mechza. There's no half-half. In some ways, kavua, the case of kavua, is better, or is more lenient. It's not as strict as this case. Because as we will see, that's a very important point in understanding Davar Choshev in Taaruvos. If the whole thing becomes Asr, then the whole thing is like one piece of Isser. Whereas by Kavua, it's not. It's half-half. It's Mechza Mechza. And we were saying Mechza Mechza the Isser. Now we're seeing how Mechza Mechza can be in some ways a Kula. Because you take that and you put it into a Taaruvos, and you have a good Svek Sveika, which is why we were matter there, from Svek Sveika. Oh, but there you matter Svek Sveika, why not here? Well, because you don't really have a Svek Sveika until you get to the third set.
Exactly.
Like you explained very well. So over there, we don't have the problem. Here we do have it. And as the Shach points out, we said that before, that the Shach said the whole din of Kavua is a Chidush itself. It's a Chidush, Kavua. So you don't have more than just a Chidush. We're not machmir more than beyond the Chidush. So if it fell into a Teruvus, we're matir. Here, obviously, the whole thing was it's a Davar Choshev, it's a completely different concept. So we have a machlokes in our scenario, based on, of course, on how you learn the halacha, the din in the Gemara, whether you need 2 sets or 3 sets. What's the svara of the Rambam that you need 3 sets? So, as we just explained, the Gra, and I think the Shulchan does a very good job as usual in going through the details of this svara. He says that in the first Taaruvos, what's happening is the Chachamim answer the entire Taaruvos Arushoina to begin. It doesn't, a suffix, there's no more suffix therefore. Like he said, when the Chachamim said the whole thing is Aser, there's no suffix anymore. That's how, in order to understand the Rambam, or anyone that goes with that shita that you need 3, we have to understand that the first Taaruvos is not even a suffix. It's completely Aser. I mean, that's the logic over here, of what's going on here. So what do we have in the Taaruvos Ashniya? We only have 1 suffix. Right? In the Taaruvos second set, we only have 1 suffix. Is it this that fell in from this Aser or not? Okay. Now, Svek Sveika, there's a rule, we're going to be learning a klal, that Svek Sveika is not stronger than Roiv. Roiv is stronger. Svek Sveika, the concept of Svek Sveika is not stronger. Lo odif meruba. We're going to eventually learn that.
So whatever I can't accomplish through Roiv, I cannot accomplish through Svek.
So imagine, if I couldn't accomplish through Roiv the first time around, the Aruch HaShulchan explains this very nicely. How do you expect me to allow Svek Sveika over here? If even Roiv couldn't accomplish that the first time around. Very nice, a nice diuk of, based on the klal, the Svek Sveika is not stronger than Roiv. If I couldn't accomplish it with Roiv, how do you expect me to accomplish it now with Svek Sveika? So that's a very interesting additional diuk in why we can't allow the second set.
Oh, the second set.
The second set, right. But what happens in the third set? By the time it got to the second set, the chashivas is gone. Why? Because it's not for sure that the original Isser fell in here. What fell into, the second set is just one of the Taaruvos, not the original Isser that we're saying it's not Batal Afilu Be'er necessarily. That, in the first Taaruvos, that's where it originally fell. So it has the Chashivas. But by the second set, that Chashivas has weakened. Right? Second set, that Chashivas is here because what fell into the second set is not necessarily the original Isser.
So then
it's only a suffix. It's only a suffix. A suffix in a Dover Choshev is not a Dover Choshev.
Okay, so then a Roiv should be
right. Well,
the second one.
Yeah. But anyway, so we see that the Chashivas is gone. Therefore, we have 1 suffix. We still have 1 suffix.
We have 1 suffix.
Yeah.
But
by the third time, we have 2 sveikas.
Right. Okay, so because of Svek Sveika, we
right.
not allowed in the first one. But because of Roiv, we should be. It's no longer Davar Chashuv. Even if it was the Yisr, it would be a Davar Chashuv.
Exactly. So that's where the other shittas hold, that it's nevertheless a real Svek Sveika.
No. It would
by
be
the second Taaruvos.
By the second Taaruvos, it should be a Roiv. Since I
Okay, yes, it should be mutter, right.
Mutter because of Roiv.
Right. Mutter because of Roiv, right.
Because it's no longer, the Chashiv is
yes.
no longer an obstacle.
Yes, in a sense, because of Roiv, yeah. I have to think about that because there's 2 ways to learn that.
Well, the way you would just
why? No. There's 2 ways to learn why the second Taaruvos will be mutter. So I think what you're saying is dependent on a machlokes Rashba and Toises. We'll see it in a moment. We'll see
Because
it.
the way you were just explaining it,
Right.
that the fact that there's a doubt whether it's the Isser takes away the Shivas aspect.
Because there's a
of it.
suffix about it. Also,
So now that there's a suffix, it would be mispatel, right? If it's no longer davar chashuv.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
According to how you were explaining it.
Especially if you remember that there's a lot of poiskim, and by the way, another reason why the Shach says the Mechaber was so easygoing over there in Kavua, allowing the Taaruvos of Kavua, whereas here is not, because as it is, the Mechaber knows a lot of poiskim are makel with requiring only 2 instead of 3 too. So that's also the Shach gives that as an explanation as why the Mechaber there was lenient.
The mind is correct. The Shach is saying because here the Mechaber knows that there are poskim that allow up to 2, so over there he's making.
Yeah, that here in our case of 3 sets versus 2,
where he's being machmir,
where he's machmir, there are others who say it's 2 is enough. Quite a few. Over there he's makel. That's right. Interesting. Yeah. Just before we go on, however, the Shach touches on various other points. If you look at the Rambam, the Rambam, there's a lot of pirushim on the Rambam. A lot of poiskim hold that you can be medayik from the Rambam. The Rambam was a very exacting. He didn't use words just like that. So you can be medayik, just like we're medayik from Rashi. You can be medayik from the Rambam. Really, if you learn the Rambam, you will see that there's room to be medayik on why he chose this word. Why did he leave out this word? And you may be having insight into his shita of why. Because what's the big problem with the opposition that has to the Rambam? Those, the Ravid and everybody. Where's the Makor, Rambam? Where are you saying this? And sometimes we know where he takes it from, but sometimes we don't. And I think he wrote once that not every little halacha he took from a Makor, but that's what he felt. Based on, of course, his Messiah, based on his understanding. He came up with his opinion, and he may not have written, this is my opinion. Okay. So he wasn't verbal about how he got it. But you can be medayik from the Rambam. Yes, many, many times you can see from the Diyuk how the Rambam really holds and why he holds that. So here, the Rambam, in talking about Taaruvos of 2 or 3 sets, makes somehow a distinction between Avodah Zarah and Isur Achila. By Avodah Zarah, he actually says 2. If anything, there should be 3. Avodah Zarah. And here, he's saying 3. Why should here be 3 and there be 2? So there's a whole Pri Megadim on this, and the Shach, I think, goes into this a little bit. Don't remember all the specifics, but basically this is the way it goes. It's very possible that the Rambam was machmir by Isur Achila, food, more than he was machmir in Isur Hano, that you're not going to eat. 2 Taaruvos is enough. That makes sense. So to some, that is a good enough chiluk or explanation, or difference between why the Rambam would hold one way in one area and another way in another area. All right. By Avodah Zarah, 2 sets are required. By Achila, 3 sets are required. Pri Megadim, however, points out that if you're medayik in the Rambam, you will notice that he talks about one case uses the word pirish. Pirish, tabas, pirish, it was a piece of or whatever it was that came out of the Taaruvos, came out, and then got mixed in the second set. So it was not that the 2 were Taaruvos, exact Taaruvos. One was the first step or first stage is a pirish. If that's the case, it could be that when you have a pirish and then you have a Taaruvos, all you need is 2 times. You need a pirish and a Taaruvos. In other words, that would be sufficient. You wouldn't need 3.
From what? From what?
From a Taaruvos.
You really have 3. The first Taaruvos, the pirish. So
Okay.
The Taaruvos is basically a 3rd state.
You could say that. That's interesting too. Yeah, because really maybe that's a 3rd state. But it's not, because it's coming from that Taaruvos, which we were saying it's all Asur. Elamai called the Porish. But we may not allow called the Porish in that case. It depends. So
if we're going to say that pirish has a role here,
if it has a role, then you could say
it
perhaps
would be,
that's where the Pri Megadim is saying that pirish, if that's the diuk in the Rambam, it could makes the whole difference here. It's a different kind of scenario. The case is a different kind of case, and that is why he said 1 Taaruvos. But in our case of Achila, where he's quoting from the Gemara, more or less quoting, that you have fell in, then fell in again, whether it's dafka or not dafka 3 or 2, that's the machlaikas. Did the Gemara really mean dafka 3 times? That's where the part of the problem arises. What did the Gemara really mean? Or is there a different girsa? So it could be, like the others say, by Isur Achila he was more machmir, but I like the Pri Megadim's diyu. He says pirish. Maybe the whole case, the whole scenario there with pirish is different, then mixture falling into another mixture. I just thought I'd bring this out because sometimes there are differences. Once you're medayik in the words, you find that he's talking about a completely different case. What's interesting is Rashi. I haven't seen this anywhere else. Rashi says that once you have 3 sets, you have the first taruvas, right? You have the second set taruvas, then you have the third set taruvas. One piece of the second taruvas fell into the third. The third is mutter, right? Svek sveika. Guess what? Now that the piece of the second fell into the third and made the third set mutter, it also made the second set mutter. Once you introduce the svek sveika into the third, you also introduced it backwards into the second one. Rashi. Rashi is saying that once you've made the third set mutter, you've made the second set mutter too. But not everybody agrees. From the Rambam, it's mashma namapitom. If anything, the isur is in the roiv. In other words, it's not. We're not saying, we cannot say that you have the exact same spek sveika in the second set as you have in the third set. So the Meforshim should not all go along with Rashi. As the Taz brings out the Pri Megadim, I think it also explains it, that according to Ram, the Isura Beruba Isa. And therefore, we assume that the Isur remained behind. Did not come in the third set. If it remained behind, that the second set should still remain is also. Alright, that was just Rashi. Rashi's the only one that says that, I think. Okay.
Rashi.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Sounds a little bit like Brera.
Yeah, sounds a little bit like that, yeah. Okay, Darkei Moshe brings down that if the Maisa the Maskana, that if we're talking about an Isur Torah or Isur Dover Choshuv, one should be machmir like Shittas, Rashi, and Rambam to require 3 taruvas. And if it's an Isur D'Rabbanan or a Safek Isur D'Oraisa, then you can be maker like the Shittas Rabbeinu Tam that it's enough with 2 taruvas. Shach brings down that in a Hefsa Beruba, 2 taruvas is okay. The only thing is you cannot eat them all together. Now, before we go on, as far as eating them, the third set we said is mutter, right? We said that the third set is all mutter. And Ramos says, Mikol mokom ein la'adam echad lechol iskulon. So the Shach says, the Ramos can only be talking about the ones who are matir the second set of taruvas. Why should there be a problem eating the whole taruva, the third set, as one? By the time you got to the third set of taruvas, you shouldn't have a problem. The Shach says there should not be a problem eating all of it together if it's the third set. By the second set, I can see the chumrah. That there's still a suffix. Why? It's not a real svek sveika. If it's not a real svek sveika in the second set, that even to those who hold that it's mutter because it is bottle, because the chashivas is gone, or because you do call it some form of svek sveika, either way, I can understand the Shach says why the Ramah would be machmir there, because it's not strong enough maybe. But by the time you get to the third set, he doesn't see any makor of why one should answer all 3. Even though I saw the Minchas Yaakov does say it's also, some say that the Isser is still, the suffix is still there, there's some suffix still there, and why should you want to eat? There's a suffix still. Even though you're allowed to eat it, don't eat it all together. Alright, but that's what the Shach says. Another important point here is the Rashba. The Rashba says, and this is going back to what you were saying, when we talk about 3 sets of taruvas, do you actually have to have a roiv in each one? The Rashba seems to imply that if you had even half of them going poirish to one place, half of them poirish to another place, okay? So there's no majority, but you had a part, even a half, going somewhere else, it's already a second step, it's already a second mixture. That's what the Rashba seems to be saying, because he says even machtzison. You still have a sveika in the second taruvas.
The second.
The Rashba holds even in the second. Remember, there are those who hold that by the second set you already have some sort of sveika. Okay? And the only reason the others hold that you need 3 is because that sveika is not strong enough, it's not a real sveika. The first time around it's completely usher, right? So the second time it's one suffix, so you don't really have a sveika. But the others who hold that it is, or it's a real bitul beroiv, the Rashba seems to be saying you don't really need roiv. In other words, from the way he says it, if you have a part, even a half, taken from here and going somewhere else, it's fine to qualify it as a second step in the process of being of introducing a sfek sveika. Well, wait a minute. Whereas the Rambam doesn't seem to say that. Rambam, if you read the language of the Rambam, very, very clear. He says that you actually need taruvos, where each taruvos, in each taruva set, there is a roiv. Chad betray.
Both times.
Both times. Now, there are quite a few meforshim that I saw that say different things like the Rashba, but what's the machloikis here? Why do you need roiv, or do you need just to create a sfek over here? That's what the question really is, and what is really necessary here to break the davar choshuv over here? Because that's what is being accomplished here. We're really eliminating the davar choshuv, as we did last time in Sif Zayin, where we said one fell into the ocean. And therefore, there's a leniency over here, and we're saying, you know what? You have roiv, it's enough.
But that's if you say roiv.
Yeah.
If you say it's a double split.
Right, exactly. But what?
How does that work?
Exactly. So in other words, what is happening over here? What is exactly necessary over here to eliminate the problem of davar choshuv? Is it enough to say roiv, like we said before? Is it enough? Is it necessary? Is it necessary, or is it a sfek sveika over here?
So in other words, in the case of the sfek sveika, even if I didn't have roiv, it would still be permissive sfek sveika. In other words, with respect to the Isser would be abolished, not by virtue of a roiv. Even if I don't have roiv, since it's a sfek sveika, I can.
That's exactly it. So those who
that's enough minute.
Those who have learned Taaruvos, those who have gone through Taaruvos, this is the way they learn the machloikes, what appears to be the machloikes in understanding what is really required here in the end. Do we require the removal of the chashivas, and that removal occurs as the steps increase? Or do we actually require several sets of roiv to accomplish that removal of chashivas? Because we all want to accomplish the same thing. But how does that come about? Is it enough that it just gets mixed again? And of course, through a sfek sveika, we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Or does that siluk of the chashivas come about only because of the number of roiv, number of taruva sets that contain roiv? So here we have 3 sets that there is roiv. Set number 1, set number 2, and set number 3. So the Rambam seems to be that you need the ribui, you need a multitude of sets that contain roiv to accomplish that. Because that's the only way you can get it. And you will get a sfek sveika in the end, really. In the end, you get a sfek sveika.
Why do you need the roiv to get a sveika?
No. Well, that's the question. That's what the Mechaber says. The only reason I told you about the din of bitul beroiv is to accomplish sfek sveika. In the end, I have a sfek sveika, which is interesting. I agree with you. Why would you need a sfek sveika if you have? Because roiv hasn't worked till now.
Oh, my question was the other way around.
Right.
If you have a sfek sveika, why do you need a roiv?
Well, that's why they say the Rashba says you don't really need roiv. That's the point. That's a very interesting chiluk here. It makes a big difference if you need roiv or not. So it all depends what is happening and what is expected or what is required by the halacha to remove the chashivas. And it could be that that's what the Rashba is saying, that I don't really need roiv. All I need to accomplish is a sfek sveika. Sfek sveika, I don't really need to have roiv. I can even have 50% having fallen in, not just one piece. And I have a sfek sveika over here. I still have a sfek sveika. And the Rambam seems to be saying no, because the words that he chooses includes the term roiv. In other words, I need a multitude of sets that each one contains roiv to cancel out the chashiva. How does it cancel out? It still cancels out through a sfek sveika, because by the time you get to the 3rd set, what you're saying is not roiv. You're not saying that roiv is mevatalet, right?
You're saying the roiv, the sfek sveika is mevatel the chashiva, and then the roiv can be mevatel the isser.
Yeah, well, in the end, you always need roiv to be mevatel the iser.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you need a sfek sveika to be matter what we originally were asering, which is a davar chashuv. Mm-hmm. Right. Very good. Yeah. So that's a whole different way of understanding this halacha.
No, so the roiv can only kick in once you have eliminated the
B'davar chashuv. So
for which we need this fake
right.
figure.
So the question therefore is, when does that happen? At what stage? At set number 2 or set number 3? That the davar chash lechora, but the set number 2, as many Rishonim poskim learn, that the chashivas is already gone, and that is why they say we don't really need 3 sets. Chashivas is already gone. It's only a suffix if you have that to begin with. You only have a suffix. You can have a sveka here too, enough, at least enough
To be mevatel.
To allow the bitul roiv to work.
Because you have another suffix according to the chashivas, so now you can be limited in roiv.
Right. Yeah.
On the first time around.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is a good place to stop. And Mr. Hashem will come back. We'll go over this, and we'll go into Svek a little bit, and see test, and see the additional concepts that are awaiting us.